Hello, welcome to Quackalope. Thank you for being here. Today we're bringing you a right for you, wrong for you review on Age of Steam from Eagle Gryphon Games. Now, we're reviewing this game for two very important reasons. First and foremost, this is a game that a gaming group here in Cleveland with me is obsessed with, and so I've had a chance to dive in time and time again over the course of the last, 3 months or so. Along with that, though, Eagle Gryphon Games is bringing back another Kickstarter with 13 additional maps. And I know that sounds like a lot, but trust me, there's people with hundreds of these printed out and saved in the closet. So in this video, we want to answer the most important question for you and your gaming group. Is this a game that is right for you, which means you should back it and grab it, or
wrong for you, and maybe you should stay away from it because it isn't the thing that fits your game group.
In this series, we're going to dive down 7 different categories that I analyzed personally when deciding if I want to add a game to my collection. Those categories are an overview of the game, a breakdown of the theme, a discussion around the accessibility, a deep dive into the gameplay, a focus on the modes of play, a conversation about the innovation, whether or not it is or isn't, and then finally, we're going to analyze the price and ultimately come to a conclusion for ourselves and hopefully help you come to one as well. Let's talk about the premise of Age of Steam. Wes, do you want to give an overview of what this game is? And then I'll fill in the details that maybe you don't know, because you have not played this quite as much as I.
That's definitely true. I've definitely not played it as much as you, but I enjoy the heck out of it. I had a great time playing it.
Cool. What's going on here?
Okay, so the main thing about this game is that you are running your own railroad company and you are trying to deliver goods from one place to another, so a bit of pick up and deliver. You're also laying track, and then you're also working on a system of trying to balance the amount of money that you're taking in loans with the amount of profit that you get on the back end. So you're making tons of money, but in the end, money isn't the thing that actually wins the game. The point of winning the game is all of the income that you make throughout the game balanced against the loans and things that you've taken out. You could have $200 left over when you're all said and done, and that means bupkis to you.
It's an interesting game because it, for me, kind of divides the line between the heavier 18xx train-style games and more accessible pick-up-and-deliver or route-building games that the board game genre is known for, right? It's this weird middle point where you are playing a train game, but that train game is actually familiar and feels more like a board game than I would say maybe a heavier economic game. The course of the game, the main principle is you're going to start off by determining whether or not you want to go into debt farther by taking loans, which you almost always have to do at the start of the game. Those loans will pay for, one of your primary concerns, bidding for turn order. Turn order is going to determine the actions that you get to take and how quickly or efficiently you get to take them. Meaning, can you deliver more goods? Can you deliver them faster? Can you build more routes? How do you shift around this map? After you've bid some of that precious income for turn order, you'll then spend it on building routes. You're trying to connect various different regions, either by laying track or laying down other cities and developing track, so that you can connect various colored cubes to various colored locations. It turns into a route building and pick up and deliver game with a heavy economic puzzle underneath. After you've done that, you'll run your routes, doing your best to either steal or just produce on the routes that you already have, and you'll come down to the point where you determine how much you've made, how much income you're generating with every single route that you've ran, and whether or not you're actually out of debt or still paying it back, because the longer your routes are and the more debt you've accumulated, the more shares you've sold off, the farther in debt you're going to have to dig yourself out of.
Yes.
It's this weird puzzle where the first dollar you make in the game comes about halfway through the course of play, and everyone sort of gives you a nice little golf clap from the side. And if you make more than that on your first run, holy cow, the whole table explodes and you're now the target for the rest of the game experience. This game also has one insanely unique feature to it. It is beloved by game designers and players alike, with a small but very, very ardent community. And that community continues to iterate upon the maps and the production here. I mean, Age of Steam, published by Eagle Gryphon, is the most official way to get into the game. It'll give you the cubes and let you kind of upgrade the components and have a very nice play experience. But if you fall in love with this, there are hundreds of other people that produce maps and allow you to do print and play options for this title. Now, Eagle Gryphon will be releasing 13 new maps, which is only a drop in the bucket, but for myself, who dives in time and time again, it's nice to have the higher quality, upper level of production. Again, it bridges that gap between the print and play 18xx community and the people like myself that are a little bit more board gamers at heart while loving an economic puzzle. So, if you're looking for a route building, pick up and deliver style game with a fascinating economic puzzle where you'll spend half the game in debt and celebrate every cent you make, that has a ton of variability and various maps that change the play experience every single time you sit down without much rules learning or complexity, this game might be
the game for you.
It might be right for you. That being said, let's go ahead and talk about the theme. What do we have here? How thematic is the game? Does it feel like you're running trains? Like, does theme even matter in this title?
I believe theme absolutely matters in this particular title because that's the whole point of the game is you're literally running a railroad company. You're in charge of setting down all those different tracks. You're in charge of making sure you've got enough money by the end of the round to be able to cover your expenses, because if you don't, you go bankrupt and game's over for you. I think each individual map also has a unique character and flavor to it. For instance, this particular one here in Sweden, instead of adding different cubes on the board every particular round like you do with the traditional game, you're actually recycling each cube into a different color until it eventually ends up burning up at the very end. It's a really thematic, unique way to play.
I would say there's some maps and experiences that are more thematic than others. Like there's a bankruptcy map where you're doing your best to, well, run out of money. There's also maps that have like zombie apocalypses and other things set underneath them. The core heart and soul of Age of Steam, though, is a route-building game set in a train universe, but it doesn't feel as trainy as some other iterations upon that system. And so if you're just looking for a really crunchy economic puzzle, something in the line of like Power Grid, for instance, which is a route-building game, but it's a route-building game where you're connecting electrical lines and pipes instead of trains kind of moving across the circuit, this game's going to still fill that same niche. I think the theme does a lot for me, but I also think the theme is maybe non-essential for those that just want to experience a cool puzzle. So if you're looking for a train game, fantastic.
Yep.
But if you're looking for something that maybe can step away from just being a train game and be a really cool experience outside of that as well, it still might be right for you. Let's talk about accessibility. How quickly was this to learn? Now, you actually just played one of your first games. Now,
yes,
you did a little bit of research.
I did.
And you have played 18XX, so we walked you into it appropriately. But how easy was it to understand the concepts here and maybe get this to the table in the future?
This was a significantly easier game than some of the other like 18XX games and things like that. I think it's a nice balance in between. It's not too overly difficult to learn. And I think the teach may have been all of 20 minutes max. So I think overall that's a pretty quick and easy concept to get underneath your belt. It's obviously significantly more difficult than some of the basic train games that are gateway games, so to speak. But I don't think it's anywhere near as theoretically complex as like an 18XX game while still feeling crunchy like that.
The cool thing here for me is that once you've learned one system and one map, it's as simple as reading a single page of rules or caveats to understand what other maps do, and those experiences really do feel varied and different. The hardest part here, though, is going to be getting your mind wrapped around the economy of the game. It is easy to fall apart, it is easy to get cut off, it can be mean from time to time, and so there's this puzzle of how much debt do I go into, how much income do I need, where am I spending it, how much can I bid for turn order, and even now, probably almost a dozen games in, I'm still at the point where I have to pause, think, and sometimes ask the people that are playing around the table, hey, if I want to build 3-track and upgrade a city, I have $13, but I'm also going to be $7 in debt in the end of the season, so I need at least 2 set to the side, because right now the maximum routes I'm going to be running are going to be 3 and a 5, and if I don't want to go bankrupt and lose points, I need to at least have that, which means I could bid 3 on turn order, I'd have enough to spend to build my units, and if all my routes go perfectly, I will survive.
You're making it sound way more complex than I think in the long run it is.
There are moments where you have to think through like that.
There's definitely moments where you have to think through it.
And the better you get at the game, the more you focus on that.
That's probably true.
I went bankrupt early in our last gameplay.
But I also think you can get in your own head with things like that too. So if you're just focusing on the concepts of the game and where you're going to go from one place to another, I don't think it's nearly as overly complex and mathy as some of the other more economic-based games would be.
Yeah, I'd agree. So if you're looking for a game that has a vastly new experience every time you sit down without a lot of extra rules overhead, expansion upon expansion that adds new modules to the play, this one...
it's great for you.
It might be right for you, but that being said, if you don't love following the numbers, or at least keeping an eye on your economy, this one just might not
be the thing for you.
It might not be the game for you. Let's talk about gameplay, and not how to play the game, but the elements of gameplay that would make this right or wrong for us if we were determining if we wanted to pick it up.
I have a great place to start.
Okay.
It's brutal. It is incredibly brutal. You can cut someone off and completely mess up their entire concept. Someone like Jesse, who's pre-planning 7 or 8 moves ahead of time, who's thought all this out. Well, I pull this amount of money off, and I'm going to do this and that. And then someone comes
other
and
people
don't play with you.
Aren't playing.
Yeah. Because you can just come through with one track and go, there you go, sorry buddy, and then do something completely different on a completely different area of the map, and you have absolutely royally messed somebody up. I think being able to play on your feet is a great way to play this game, and if you aren't taking advantage of those brutal tactics that the game has, I think you're really missing out on a great aspect of the game that is really good.
And different maps will have different experiences around that, but I think it's an important thing to point out. There's definitely a bit of take that here, and if you want to be cruel, you absolutely can be. So if you don't love that in games, or you have someone that maybe overplays their hand a little bit, or overreacts when someone does something like that, this one might be one that you want to consider who you're playing with.
Yes.
One thing that would make this wrong for me would be having to run it just on my own. If I was teaching a brand new group of people and I was running the economy down the side here, I would need a little bit more prep than I think I typically have when I personally sit down.
Sure.
Because I am playing with a game group who likes rules and likes to follow order. And that's not me. I get taught games by a lot of people, and I mess things up or overlook things or just miss things from time to time. And so I think this game benefits from having someone, not a rules dictator, but having someone that is a rules aficionado, that likes tracking rounds, likes tracking step by step.
Like a manager, someone who manages this side of the board, because that is definitely a bit on the... It can be a bit finicky if you're not careful.
It's not too bad, but you can definitely let numbers slide here and there. There's a process and a flow to how you play the game. One of the things that I really like about Age of Steam is just going to be the way that you actually, and every map is different, but the way that you actually can view and visualize how the next cycle of the game is going to go. From moving one cube to another, connecting longer and longer routes, and really chaining or moving up and down your tracks and other people's tracks. There's a lot of different approaches to take, and twisting and turning and figuring out the puzzle to solve when it comes to just a spatial aspect, I find really satisfying.
I completely agree with you. I mean, even though I'm one who only plans a few moves ahead because I know people around me are going to mess with stuff that I do, I still feel like it's really entertaining to try and set yourself up for the end game goal of running longer and longer trains and finding ways to manipulate this city here, and I can add this track on the other side and get extra points for this particular run, even though I'm only moving a cube literally like 3 places away. But I'll move it all this big huge circle all the way to get it back around again.
So, if you're looking for a game that has a bit of take that in it, that has a great visual element, but might need someone to manage the rules a little bit more carefully than someone like me does, this game might be right.
Might be right for you. It could be, a little bit.
Let's talk about modes of play, and this one I can't even start digging into thoroughly. I've already went over the fact that there are so many different variations in maps, but hundreds of different variations of maps and experiences. But there's also, and I think the only caveat that I'm going to stick in here, there's also a lot of stuff that caters to a lot of different player counts, both in the Age of Steam core box and also in all the different things that you could get out there in the world. There's 2-player games all the way up to like 6, and I'm sure higher player counts.
I'm sure.
And I think as long as you're catering what you're playing to the right group, I think arguably there's probably an experience here for everyone.
Yeah.
Now, 2-player is going to be a little bit different. A little bit more of a head-to-head economic game, whereas 4, 5, 6 players will get a little bit more chaotic and messy on the board. But as far as modes of play go, that would be my caveat. I don't know that there is if you like the game, I don't know that there is an experience that you couldn't find in it.
Because of the fan base and what they've been able to put together, I agree with you. I don't think there is a bad player count as long as you're willing to look for the right board. And that's what it boils down.
I would venture to guess there's probably even a solo mode or something out there.
I'm sure there is.
I'm sure there is.
There has to be.
So if you're looking for a game that can answer yes to the question of, can I play this?
Yes, this is the game for you.
It might still be. Let's talk about something that is a hard conversation to have.
Okay.
Because all I have is my own context and my own perception.
Right.
But innovation. First and foremost, is Age of Steam innovative? And if so, how? And if not, does it matter?
That is a really tough question.
It is.
Because I think it does so many things well. Let's ask the question of what innovation really is. Is innovation doing something completely new that's never been done before? That's one type of innovation.
Yeah.
Another type of innovation is where you take a whole bunch of really great concepts that you've plucked from different areas, different genres, and then you find a way to seamlessly press them into a game that really shines.
Like a chicken turning into a pot pie.
Yes. Yes,
Think
like
about
a
it.
chicken turning into a pot pie. I mean, you're pressing it into... Yeah, all right.
Well,
except
you started with plucking.
Except for peas. Peas and pot pies are gross. There's probably a pea in this game somewhere, but...
What are you thinking?
I'm thinking this game does a lot of things extremely well. Is it overly innovative in that it brings a whole bunch of new concepts out that maybe haven't been done before? I don't think that's the case, but I do think that packaging it in this way is innovative in and of itself because you have this great, really crunchy experience without it being overly difficult, and the teach is nice and easy, so you still get that really deep game that has a lot of fun aspects to it.
I don't know if any one element of the game is innovative. I think I'm on board with you there. I mean, we've got turn order bid, we've got going into debt, we've got laying track, route building, bringing goods from one point to another point, moving colored cubes. All of that is pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
The thing that I think is potentially innovative when it comes to Age of Steam is the community that is around it and behind it that have iterated upon the system so many times.
But is that different than 18XX?
Yes and no. I think it's different in a way. And maybe not vastly so. But in the board game space, because 18XX I still think of as slightly outside of our community.
Okay.
Like, I love it, but, you know...
Me too.
And just now they're starting to get to the point where they're printing box-style 18XX games.
Right.
But until recently, like, it was kind of like Magic the Gathering. Like, I consider that a card game, a board game. It's adjacent to us.
Right.
They're not quite the same family.
All right.
Age of Steam is a little bit more in that pocket. I would call Age of Steam a board game. And because of that, the degree to which the community has iterated on, created new scenarios, and continued investing in this, I think that is something that you probably don't find in a lot of other games in our space.
Oh, I 100% agree. I can only think of two, really, off the top of my head that are really that innovative. Like, literally, 18XX and Age of Steam are pretty much the major two in that regard.
Yeah, maybe some of your tactics, like miniature skirmish games and stuff like that as well.
Yeah,
but again, I consider those adjacent.
That's highly adjacent.
Consider those adjacent. So, if you're looking for something that is arguably innovative when it comes to the wider community experience, but maybe not too much here, while doing a ton that brings experienced and well-refined concepts together in a pretty immaculate puzzle, Age of Steam.
It's probably the game for you.
It is probably the game for you. Finally, let's talk about price. And I don't have any information upon the next Kickstarter or what these 13 boxes are going to be.
It's going to be $5. If we say that, will they make it happen? It's going to be $5 per map, probably. Maybe
so,
not. I don't know. I'm sure it's
I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, I could Google on this, I believe this runs anywhere from 80 to like 100.
Yeah.
It's an Eagle Griffin.
Yeah.
Deluxeified game.
I would say 80 to 120.
80
probably
to 120.
Somewhere in there, yeah.
Depends on where you find it.
Yeah.
You know, whether or not you're getting maybe a secondhand copy.
Oh, yeah.
But I think, is that if it was 80 versus 120, is there any range?
It wouldn't
in there
change
where it
my mind
becomes-
about wanting to have it as part of my collection. No.
No.
Absolutely not.
What if the expansion was an equivalent price? Because 13 extra maps, we could be talking $250 on Kickstarter all in. Maybe 180
with a copy of Age of Steam.
Yeah, maybe 180. I'd say 180 to 220 all in.
13 of these maps.
No, they aren't printed like this.
They're going to be actual boards. 13 board, like
Mm-hmm.
cardboard boards.
I believe so. Yep.
No way.
I believe so.
$250 all in is a great deal. If
They will be. I'll show you what they'll be like. Well, I don't have the maps over here. They're somewhere. Oh yeah, they're right down here.
That would be one heck of a deal. Eagle Griffin, listen up. If it's $250, you might as well just consider it sold to me.
They will be like this.
Oh wow.
So
13 boards like that?
Yep, that's what the expansion is.
What?
Yep.
Oh my gosh, that's really nice. Yeah, I thought it was going to be this type of thing.
No, they did this for me to prototype.
Man,
I should have said that, I suppose.
Yeah, you definitely should have said that, because I was like, oh, I mean, that's really nice. An extra like $40-$50 maybe.
No, this was just for me to like have a chance to play and show off.
That's boards, 13 extra boards, and a copy of Age of Steam. Yeah. $250 would be awesome.
I think what we're both saying is that there is a price point for the base game. There's a price point between $80 and $120 that makes sense.
Yep.
And for the expansions, I think $180 up to $250. $250 might be touching on it a little bit for me.
Yeah, it would.
I wouldn't not do it, but I definitely take a closer look before backing.
And I'm sure there's going to be upgraded stuff and extra bits and whatnot that you will get. Well, I think that's I didn't realize that was going to be 13 of those full boards.
Yeah,
that's really awesome because they're also double-sided, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that's a great idea.
Well, I mean, double. It'll be 7 of them.
7 boards, 13.
Something like
Got
that.
it. Okay.
Something like that.
Sure, that's fair.
So,
very cool.
One of them, I would assume, if it's 7, there might be 14, but one of them's like uses 2 boards together for a single large map. That would be my assumption.
Yeah.
To make 13, because then you have a giant sprawling 8 player
Yeah, because
thing.
Isn't one of them one where you have to have 2 copies?
Something like that. I don't know. I'm not 100% sure, but something like that.
Sure.
Either way, that's the answer to your question that you didn't ask. Yeah. But let us know down below.
I think that, yeah.
Is Age of Steam right for you?
Or is it maybe a little wrong for you?
Yeah. It's a good conversation.
Yeah.
We'll see you next time.